Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Controller's Office Lunch and Learn opportunity. We're going to walk through how to use the grant dashboard and the HCM distribution reporting tools today. We tried to come up with a time that would be convenient for all of you, and we thought lunch would be the best option. So today with us we have Lindsay Anastasio, our Assistant Controller. We have Marie Baca, our Assistant Director for Grants and Funds Management, and Tiffany Boyd, Senior Manager for Compliance. And Tiffany is actually going to present the information today. So I'm going to pass that over to her so that she can get started.
All right, can everyone hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, thank you. So sorry.
They're giving thumbs up, but I guess the presenter can't see them.
So sorry. Well, thank you guys for joining us. As Joanne said, we are excited to have you all, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. So here's a quick agenda, what we're going to go over today. We figured we would start with a couple of regulations to know just from the financial perspective, just given today's environment in the economy. Everyone, including our sponsors, are, tightening their belts and really watching what we're spending and how we're spending. So we figured we would just take a few minutes to go over a couple of regulations just from the financial perspective. We're going to go over our controller's website just to show you a few key aspects about it. And then we're going to jump right into the hub and the various reporting tools that are available to you. Specifically, the Finance Intranet and the Grant Dashboard tool contained within the Finance Intranet, and HCM Distribution. That's the main payroll tool. And then we'll talk about additional resources and contacts if you have additional questions. So important regulations to know. The first one, of course, is uniform guidance, also known as 2 CFR 200. And that is, the main source of guidance that we use. It establishes, those administrative requirements, the cost principles, and the audit requirements for all federal awards. This is a link to the ECFR. I recommend bookmarking it. If you ever have questions, if we ever receive questions, this is where we go to look up the answers. And we also encourage you to become familiar with any agency-specific guidance. So, because oftentimes NIH, NSF, they also have additional guidance that they will issue that's oftentimes more prescriptive than just uniform guidance alone. And we'll have an example of how they can be that way in a future slide. And we also like to point out that non-federal grants, even if you don't have a lot of federal funding, for example, maybe you receive a lot of your funding from the state or maybe a private sponsor like PCORI, a lot of those non-federal grants will commonly place references to uniform guidance in their agreements, basically making them subject to all the same rules. So it's really important to be familiar with some of the guidance that we're about to go over, even if you don't have federal funding. So the first section we wanted to take a little bit of time to go over is Section 302, where it talks about internal controls. It basically says that we're required to establish and maintain effective internal control over the federal award that provides that reasonable assurance that it's being managed in compliance with regulations and that we're taking prompt action when instances of non-compliance are identified. So basically, uniform guidance and sponsors expect us to not only have systems, but also procedures and processes in place to ensure expenses are posting not only timely, but correctly the first time. And then internal controls in place to identify and correct errors in a quick and timely manner. So anytime we have to make a correction, it has to be documented with very sufficient justification. And then Section 306 is where it talks about cost sharing or matching. And the thing that we just kind of wanted to point out here, that regardless of where the cost share is coming from, whether it's cash or third party in kind, it has to be verifiable, meaning that it has to be recorded in our records, so in our accounting system, and it can't be double counted. So we can't count it on one project and then turn around and count it on another project as cost share on another project as well. And then obviously it has to be necessary and reasonable. So it has to be related to the scope of work being performed. The next section we kind of wanted to spend a little time on is section 403, where they talk about the factors that affect allowability of cost. So cost must be necessary and reasonable. And we're going to hear this phrase a lot in the next couple slides, so I apologize. But cost must be necessary and reasonable for the performance of the award. They must conform to any limitations or exclusions. And the key here on the next one, and this is why we have it bold, is it has to be consistent with policies and procedures that apply uniformly to both the federally financed and other activities of the non-federal entity. So basically, we can't, we have to be consistent with with our university policies. So for example, bonuses or additional compensation, the decision whether or not to give those cannot be based on the amount remaining on a grant or a sponsored award. It has to be consistent with our university policy. Another key thing to point out here is that a cost may not be assigned to a grant as a direct cost if it's included in our IDC rate. So for example, we can't charge electricity or water because that's included in our IDC rate. Basically, Uncle Sam wants us to be just as frugal with their money as we are with ours. Section 404 talks about reasonable cost, and a cost is considered reasonable if in its nature and amount it does not exceed that which would be incurred by a prudent person. We usually refer to this section as the prudent person standard. And so is the cost generally recognized as ordinary and necessary for the operation of the entity and the performance of the work? So is it actually needed and used? So I kind of think of this standard as, you know, when your kids come to you and ask you for something, well, is it a need or is it a want? So the same thing here. And then were sound business practices used when purchasing the item? So consider market prices for comparable goods, and then whether or not you deviated from your established policies and practices regarding purchasing that item. So for example, if the university policy is to replace computers every 2 years, but because you have a brand new grant, you want to replace a computer that's only a year old. And obviously it's not broken or anything like that. It works fine. Then that would be inconsistent, and that would not be considered a reasonable purchase. The next section is 405, and they talk about allocable cost. So a cost is allocable if the expense is chargeable or assignable in accordance with relative benefits received. This one is really important, especially given today's environment. So assigning cost with the relative benefits received. So is it incurred specifically for the award? Is it needed and used? Benefits both for the award and the other entity. And can it be distributed in proportion that can be approximated using reasonable methods? And making sure that you document the method that you used, because they do ask. They do come back and they ask that question. What was your allocation method? And was it necessary for the overall operation? So for example, if you decide to purchase a $10,000 freezer that has 2 shelves and you're using it to support 2 grants, the appropriate thing to do would be to allocate it 50% to grant A and 50% to grant B. But you'll notice the third bullet here is any cost allocable to a particular award may not be charged to other awards to overcome fund deficiencies, to avoid restrictions, regulations, or terms and conditions of an award. So in that example, let's say you decided, or let's say you've got the $10,000 freezer, it's supporting 2 grants, but unfortunately grant A is overspent. So you decide, well, I'll just charge it all to grant B because I have available budget. Well, that would be inappropriate, right? Because you're not allocating it, 1, based on proportionate benefits received, and 2, it says right here, you can't overcome deficiencies. So we're missing 2 key things there. Or let's say you don't have an equipment budget on grant A, but you do on grant B. So you decide I'm just going to charge it to grant B. Again, we would we would not be meeting this standard because we're avoiding restrictions or the terms because it's not included in the budget. So again, just being aware of this, because this is the most common thing that auditors get us on. So it's just important to be aware that if we're using items to support more than one grant, that we're taking the time to allocate it if we can. And again, if we can do it reasonably. Another example or another way that this can kind of get us, should it be audited, is, let's say an example, you have a federal award that ends at the end of April and you have a remaining balance of $2,000. So you decide to buy a smaller freezer for $2,000, but it's not going to be delivered until 4/22. So another way that auditors would get us, or could get us, would be, well, is it really allocable to this project? Was it really reasonable and necessary for the performance of this award? Because you didn't receive it until basically the last week. Was it used to perform the scope of work, right? So these are key questions that auditors would look at. So just key things to keep in mind when you're making those decisions. And then this is just an example of how agencies can be more prescriptive in their own guidance, more so than uniform guidance. So this is an example taken from HHS grant policy statement. And this is talking about cost transfers and overruns. So cost transfers by recipients between grants, whether as a means to compensate for cost overruns or other reasons, are unallowable. So they go out and they just say it outright. And then bullet 2, they say, however, permissible cost transfers should be made promptly after the error occurs, but no later than 90 days following occurrence. And so the date of occurrence is the date of original charge. And they go on to say that an explanation merely stating that the transfer was made to correct an error or to transfer to the correct project is not sufficient. So it's really important to highlight that. Because a lot of times when we do get requests to move accounts or to move expenses, that will be the general statement that we receive. But HHS clearly states that that's not sufficient justification. So a common question is, well, what would you expect for justification? Well, what they're commonly looking for is, well, how did the error occur? Why is the transaction being moved, and how does it direct the project that it's being moved to? And what are you going to do to prevent that error from occurring in the future? So, that corrective action plan, right? Those are the types of justification that they want to see when corrections are being made. And then the last section of uniform guidance that we wanted to take a minute to talk about is section 200.406. And this is where they talk about applicable credits. So anytime you discover that you've accidentally overcharged a grant, we absolutely have to. Doesn't matter how long it takes us to identify it, but as soon as we identify that we've accidentally overcharged a sponsor, we have to immediately correct it and apply the credit. There's no time frame associated with that. If it takes us 30 days or a year, as soon as it's identified, we have to apply that credit. However, as you can imagine, depending on how long it takes us to identify that error, more than likely, we're probably going to have to fund it with an A or an E fund, because we're not going to be able to place it on the correct grant at that point. But Uncle Sam always wants their refund, so as do us, I'm sure. If we overpaid our taxes, we always want our refund, right? So we just want to highlight this because sometimes people can get confused when we talk about cost transfers and things of that nature. We always, if we've accidentally overcharged or incorrectly charged a grant, we always have to remove an error off. So with that, I just wanted to take a couple of seconds to highlight our controller's office website, just a few key areas, just in case you haven't been out here before. The first area is this section here. So we're about to go over a couple of the tools, reporting tools that are available on the finance intranet, but we actually have a full webinar and training aid posted out here that will show you how to use all the tools. So if you are interested, that's located right here. And then we have additional training webinars and training aids out here under Grants and Funds Management, and you can get to that page by clicking here. And then if you need to access our financial systems and you don't have a direct link or don't know where to go, they're all located on the face of our page. So a lot of times we'll get questions about, hey, can you resend me the link to access a time and effort report or to approve a financial transaction, things of that nature. You can access all of that information right here. There's also USERA, or I don't know how to get to Finance Intranet, all that's right here. So it's really helpful if you ever need to access it. Now we're going to jump into what is the hub. And so the hub is our internal reporting site that houses all our reporting tools and resources to research our PeopleSoft accounting transactions and to retrieve account balances. There are two main sections, and we're going to cover those today. You've got the Finance Intranet, and we're going to talk about the grant dashboard, and then HCM Distribution. Something I also wanted to let you guys know is that it also provides access to legacy financial data. So that's all the data prior to FY16. And you can use the crosswalk within PeopleSoft to translate the old legacy debt fund chart field information if you need to, do conversion to ever access that information. But it is out there at your fingertips should you ever need it. So who can use these tools? Really, anyone who has access. So your business manager, budget officers, grant administrators, you as a PI or a faculty member. And this is what it looks like when you go to the hub. You'll notice here you've got the navigation, and then this is the Finance Intranet, and then this is HCM Distribution, and then you've got access to the legacy information down here. And if you don't have access and need to request something specific, you can complete a finance access form. I believe everyone should already have it, but if for some reason you change departments or things of that nature and need additional access, you can fill out that form and we can get you squared away. Oh, I got boxes. I apologize. So those are the old prior to FY16 links to access information. So then what's the Finance Intranet? It gives you access to these four tools. And again, we're just going to focus on the second one, which is the grant dashboard. But you also have access to these other tools. And as I mentioned in the earlier slide, we have a full training available out there on demand to watch at your convenience if you're interested, that will go over all of these. So the grant dashboard tool provides the ability to access expense data using the following search criteria. You can look by PI, contract number if you have a large project that has multiple project numbers, or just a specific project. And you can look up USCSP project numbers, so those are the projects that start with a 1, or USCIP project numbers, and those are the projects that start with an 8. So whether they're externally funded or internally funded, you can look up either one. Expenses will be grouped in the categories as shown on our standard USC invoice. So that is one of the special things about the grant dashboard tool. You'll also have the ability to expand those categories so you can see the actual detail account codes within each. And it will give you the budget and actual expenses for direct expenses and cost share if your project has it. So you'll be able to track it to ensure you're spending within ratio. So once you click on Finance Intranet, it'll show these 4 or 5, and then you'll click on the grant dashboard. And then for those that have never seen the PeopleSoft standard invoice, this is what it looks like. I just kind of wanted to give you a reference point. So if we do have to invoice sponsors directly, this is what they would get. Unless they have their own template, then of course, obviously we would translate this into their template and submit. And just comparing that so you know how it correlates. You can see that the budget matches exactly, and the cumulative equals the life-to-date expenses. And then cost share is actually on the bottom down here, and it correlates as well. So then that takes us to the actual, well, how do I search using the grant dashboard? In our example, we're actually going to use project 1000-8359, and we're actually going to go back to December because that period's been closed, long closed. But you notice you also have the ability to look by PI up here, or you can pull it by contract. And so we're going to hit submit, and you'll notice up here that you see all of this information. It shows you your project number, the project name, it gives you who the sponsor is. It also tells you this is the contract number. If you're not sure what a contract number is, it starts with a CON and then gives you a number. And then it tells you what the current project start and end dates are per PeopleSoft. So if you ever want to know whether or not a project extension has been processed within the system, like if you know that's something that you're working with on SAM and you don't know if it's made it through the system yet, this is a real quick way to check as it's flowing through all our offices. You can go to the grant dashboard, key in your project number, and see if it's hit the system and see if the project has been extended just by checking right here. Another key area that I want to point out is your project team. It will tell you the roles and the names of the project team members. So the BM role is the business manager, and that's the person within the department or college. The CGA role is your post-award accountant, and that's the person located within the Central Grants and Funds Management Office. And then it will list any PIs or co-PIs located on the project. And so then as you scroll down within the grant dashboard, it'll show you the total budget for the project, the current month activity for December, the life-to-date expenses, and then the remaining balance. And of course, if there's any current encumbrances, it'll also subtract that and give you an additional balance based off those. And you'll notice that this project also has cost share, and it'll give you the cost share budget and the cost share that's been booked to date. And you'll notice that all of these are hyperlinks. And once we are going to do a live demonstration here in a second, so it'll be easier to see. So again, I did want to take a second and just point out that a lot of sponsors, again, especially given the current economic environment, are expecting cost share to be charged in ratio throughout the life of the project. We've had quite a few that, as we submit invoices, that they will refuse payment if they don't see the appropriate amount of cost share booked. So we do want to just take a minute to tell you that and let you know. Maria, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, perfect. Another handy dandy feature, like we mentioned before, is you do have the ability to check this box and it'll actually display the account chart field information within all of those categories. And so once you check that box, all those account codes will now show up, and it'll show you, the salary account codes, contractual services, leases, whatever expenses that have actually hit, it will show you that detail. And as I mentioned, all of these are hyperlinks, so you can actually drill down into them and see the detail. So for this example, we're actually going to drill down into marketing services. So we're going to click on the life-to-date expenses of the 3,000. So once you click on that, it'll actually show you what makes up that $3,000. So it looks like we've got one expense, and then it'll bring us these two expenses, and we'll notice it just gives us an opening balance. So anytime you see OB, that means it's an open balance. So if you click on that, it'll actually bring you up a full listing of everything that makes up that $2,600. So we've got this one transaction that you'll notice is a voucher, and the check was paid against this PO. But we can click on all of this information and actually see the actual voucher. And I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. All right, let's get into it. So this is the hub, and I'm going to click on Finance Intranet and the grant dashboard. And our project is 8359. And I'm going to go back to December and hit submit. And again, here's my project team information. Here's my budget, but I'm going to display my chart field so I can see that the individual project information. And I'm going to drill down into marketing services. And again, as I mentioned before, and you'll notice it actually took me to one of the other tools, which is the GL activity. And the 3,000 is made up of these two items. The first item is actually the opening balance. I'm going to click on that just to see what that 2,600 is made up of. And now it gives me the actual full listing of all these transactions. And it looks like it's 4 vouchers, all paid against the same PO. I could click on any of these to see what was paid. So if you click on this, it will then ask you to log into PeopleSoft. And then you can click on the voucher ID. And there is a little bit of additional clicking, so we'll view details. But if I actually wanted to see the attachment, I could actually pull it up. And I can see that this was the invoice for this time period for 40 hours worked at $16.67 an hour. And any backup that was attached. And then you can just hit the back arrow to get back to the main page. And so if I wanted to drill down into consultants or any of these, you could do the same thing. There are different types of transactions, so depending on what the transaction is, it may look different. So in this example, anytime you see that little paperclip though, that means, or anytime it's blue, you have the ability to drill down. But anytime you see that paperclip, anytime you see that anytime you see that paperclip right there, that means there's an attachment. So in this example, when I click on it, it's actually taking me to a journal, and I can see that this was do-it charges for software billing from November 2019. The other thing that you'll notice about the grant dashboard is that there's also burn rates at the bottom. And again, these are just provided for your convenience to use at your discretion to be helpful as you see fit. So in this example, the 76 100 equals the total budget divided by the total life of the project. So 460,000 divided by 60 months, the total life of the project. So if we were going to spend the total budget evenly over the life of the project, we should spend about $7,600 a month. The next figure is 7,900. So that's how we actually spent, or how we're actually trending as it relates to our spending. So that's the life to date expenses divided by the months to date. So our life to date expenses are 333,000, and This is as of December, which is 42 months. So that's 7,900. So we're trending a little bit higher. We're spending a little bit more than 7,600. And then, of course, the monthly budget burn rate divided by the total budget equals about a little bit more than 1.5% of the budget a month is what we would be spending of the budget if we were to spend it equally. However, that compared to how we're actually spending, obviously we've already established that we're spending a little bit more than that, more than 100%. So these, again, are to be used at your discretion. We're hoping that they're helpful. They're just to see at the rate at which the budget is being spent, and hopefully can help you develop a spending strategy at the beginning of the award and throughout the award so that you can make adjustments as appropriate. They can be helpful, but again, depending on what your award is and how you're spending and what's in your budget, obviously you might have spending spikes. Tuition only hits at certain time periods, so there's going to be spending spikes that would skew the rates. Or if you have equipment purchases, obviously that would skew the rates as well. Another thing we just wanted to point out about the grant dashboard is that you may have inactive projects. Anytime you see something return yellow, that means it's inactive. So that means the project has ended and has been closed out. So, but you can still go review the data. So that is out there for you to use as well. And just some helpful tips. Remember to review expenses, including salary and effort regularly throughout the award. Try not to wait until the very end. Again, just because of, cost transfers and the expectation that expenses should be hitting correctly the first time. And remember that all expenses should be reconciled and finalized within 30 days of the project end date. And the only exception would be for any subawards that may have 60 days to issue their final invoice if applicable. And again, going back to what we said earlier, uniform guidance and sponsors really do expect us to have those systems, procedures, and processes in place to ensure that we're posting expenses correctly and timely the first time. And that we have those controls in place to identify and correct any mistakes timely. So anytime corrections need to be made, we have to document them sufficiently and have justification attached. Because the reality is when sponsors come back to audit or review, or when the auditors come in, a lot of times it's not right after the award ends. It's 3 or 4 years later. So at that point in time, business manager might not be here anymore. The PI may have changed institutions. So the justification has to be attached at the time of the request. So of course, as a result, moving forward, cost transfers, including payroll, will require PI approval. And to ensure that we can help, we try to do everything we can to help the project team with getting things finalized. And one of those things are the milestone notifications. So the project team members do receive an email notification from PeopleSoft warning them about the account expiration. And that's at 90 days and 30 days from the end date. And as you know, that email does contain various reminders of the items that should be done prior to the account expiring, including payroll account changes, purchase cards, if you need to liquidate travel reimbursements, review your subawards, and any P cards. And we do have full checklist out there on our controller's website under grants and funds management that include, actually, I think I have a slide. So located right here, we have a full closeout section that will tell you, that provides a matrix 90, 30, and 15 days after to ensure that you're able to check all those boxes and get everything completed. So the next tool we're going to go over is the HCM Distribution tool. And this is the tool that we use for reviewing payroll. And then once you click on that, you have to click on HCM Payroll Distribution Search. And again, this is a listing. This provides a listing of all employees within a department or project from the payroll system. So it shows their pay group, their funding chart field, their gross earnings, and the cost of their benefits. And I do want to let you know that this is in the same format as the old payroll hub that was used for the legacy payroll system. It just has some additional search criteria options for enhanced reporting. And of course, why is this tool important? This is the tool that we use centrally and departments use to reconcile payroll charge to an account. So to verify accuracy of employees charged, rate of pay, account chart fields, and it's what we use to detect errors or problems. So when you get into the distribution search, you'll notice that there are a lot of options. So we're just going to go over the main ones that you would use, most likely. But feel free to search and to play with it. The one thing that I like to say in all of our training webinars is that you do have view-only access, so you can't break it. The worst thing you can do is cause it to freeze. So then just close out and start again. So don't be shy about clicking boxes and seeing the information that pulls and returns and what options work best for you. And if you're unsure, if you're getting all the information that you need, don't hesitate to ask. So the first option that I want to highlight is the USC ID. So you can enter in the employee's USC ID number. So this is helpful to use if you have somebody that's maybe gotten married or had a name change. And it also acts as a search. So if you just go in there and type the person's last name, it will actually start pulling up return options. You can also just search by name and it's last first. You can enter in the project number and it'll just return every employee that's been charged to that project number. If you have a large contract with multiple projects, you can also enter in that contract number, so that CON number. If you need to review cost share, what's been booked as cost share, you can enter in that project number here. From and to pay period, that is the first and the last day of the month payroll. And these are probably the most important date fields that you would use to pull information. And of course, fiscal month, I just kind of wanted to highlight that this is follows the GL fiscal year. So July is the first month. And then fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. And I do recommend that you always make sure that this says all. I think it defaults to all now. It used to not, but now it does. But just make sure that it does say all, so that you're getting the current balance. And then you also have various options to order the data by and output, to add subtotals, things of that nature. And we'll go over these. So in our example, we're going to again use project 8359, and we're just going to pull pay periods from 1/15 to 12/31. So we're going to look at the whole year last year. We're going to make sure fiscal year says all, and we're going to subtotal the data, and we're just going to leave order by and output as the default. And so this is how the data would look when it's returned. You'll notice that 457 records were found. You'll notice that it gives you the pay group. This is important because, you know, as you're reviewing, that tells you whether or not the person is paid on a lag or currently. It tells you the pay period, so the first or the last day of the month. It gives you their chart field string. A quick tip for you guys is if this combo code starts with a C right here, that means it's a cost share combo. Only cost share combos codes start with a C. So if it starts with a C, that means it's being cost shared. The salary is being cost shared. So you'll notice none of these start with a C, so none of this is cost share. All of this is direct charge. It gives you the labor, and then it gives you the total fringe. It breaks it down, and then it gives you the total fringe. And again, just what to look for, you know, making sure that the correct employees are there. Do you have everyone? Is someone there that's not supposed to be there? And are they charged in the appropriate amounts? And then, it helps you coordinate with the appropriate people to make any adjustments. And as I mentioned, you do have different options as it relates to output and how you want to see it. So the default is fringe summary, so it shows salary and fringe. You can also look at it fringe detail vertical, so it will actually show you the earn codes and the account codes. So if you needed to know whether or not somebody received a bonus, you would select that option so you could see that detail. If you only wanted to look at fringes, you could look at fringe only. If you only wanted to look at labor, you could run labor only. So this is how the fringe detail looks. And as I mentioned, this gives you the account code, so you can see at the top here, this is the account code, 51200, and all fringes hit 51900. See the earn codes. So we got regular pay and holiday pay, but I don't see any bonuses. And then you can see their group, their pay group. You can still see that information. So they're a IC1. And then you see all the other information that you saw before. And so IC1, as you can see right here, IC1, as you can see right here, is International 12-month current. So they're paid currently. And these are links to payroll schedules and the hourly schedule should you need that information to dig further for anything. But this is an important tool if you ever were not sure whether or not someone was paid currently or on a lag. And these are the account codes. So 51200. So this person is either a full-time FTE or they're a RGP or they're a TL. And then here are some of the most common earnings codes. One thing I do want to highlight is every time I move my mouse, it doesn't like it. These are the additional pay codes, so bonus, monetary cash awards, chair professorship. These are not included in time and effort reporting, but the others are. So just, if you are ever reviewing or comparing your time and effort report with HCM payroll, just know that bonuses and monetary awards, moving expenses, stuff like that aren't included in time and effort. And as I mentioned, there are some other options for ordering the information to make it easier for your review. The default ordering is the chart field by name, meaning it will order the salary by the accounting chart field or the account code, and then the name within that accounting chart field. So that's the default. But then you can do it chart field pay period. So it'll order the salary by accounting chart field and then by pay period within that chart field. You can also do it pay period name or name pay period. So it will order the salary by pay period then name or vice versa. This is a great tool when you're trying to review employees who are split funded. So in this example, it puts the pay period all together. So you can see here exactly how this person is funded. So 25% is being directly charged to an e-fund, and then 20% is being cost shared to 8359, and then 55% of his pay is being cost shared to project 109608. And I know it's being cost shared because those two combo codes start with a C. But I'm able to see 100% of this individual's 115 paycheck all in one place. So it's just, a great tool when you're trying to see that information instead of it being ordered differently. So again, depending on what you're doing, these options to order the information come in handy. You can also order it by name chart field. So it's kind of the reverse of the beginning. It'll order the salary by name and then by chart field. And then there's also other ways to view the data. So another handy dandy tool that's an enhancement over the legacy tool is you have the ability to use this sum adjustments checkbox. So anytime you see a pink line in HCM distribution, that represents a retro funding journal entry or an RPay. So that means a correction was done. So we can see here that $611 hit, and then we took off $611. So it was a correction. So we see all those adjustments in and out, in and out, in and out. And it kind of makes it look clunky and just not very pretty, for lack of a better word. Well, if you check that sum adjustments box, the data will just show you the net effect on that accounting line. And it cleans up the data a lot. You still see the pink so that you know there were adjustments, but it just gives you the net remaining on that line. So it's a really nice feature, and it makes review a little bit easier. So I highly encourage you to use that if you're reviewing a line that has a whole lot of retro adjustments or RPay corrections on it. So now we'll jump in to HCM distribution. The nice thing about this is we do have a test environment for this, and so we're going to look at Harry Potter. So this is Harry Potter, and as I mentioned, you can search using the name, and I just want to look at 115, I think 2020 through 6/30, 2020. And I'm going to have it subtotal the data for me. Oh, it's going to make me sign in again. I'm sorry. So HCM distribution, HCM payroll. And then I'm going to have it subtotal for me. So this gives me his name. His USC ID is Grant because he's a made-up person. His pay group is G12, which is also made up. But it tells me, it subtotals it by his name and the accounting string. So again, it's just showing me the total that was charged to each accounting string. So 77,000 was directly charged to the E-fund, and it started 115 and ended 6/30. And then I cost shared 28,000 to project 8359 from 115 to 6/30. And then starting 4/30, I cost shared 15,000 to 8372, and then I cost shared 27,000 to 9608 from 115 to 228. So that's the default presentation. I could also change this to look at the earnings codes by changing the output options. And I can see it was just regular. It doesn't look like there's any bonuses here, but I can see that here, and it was charged to 51300. If I only wanted to look at labor, I could just do labor. If I'm not concerned with fringe, I could switch the output to labor only, and then it just gives me labor. But I'm going to go back to just the default, and then I'll show you the pay period name, where it will group. So pay period name will actually group them by paycheck, so I can see exactly how this individual is funded. So that's another helpful thing. So again, depending on what you need to do. And then I can see, and you can also see outliers and how it's changing. So I can see his 415 check, he wasn't split at all. Is that correct? I don't know. He didn't work on anything that month. I don't know. So again, this might be a good way to review people and see. So again, just ways that you can use this tool. There's also other ways that you can use this tool. There's two different ways you can export. You can use the CSV. So this option will download all the data into an Excel file. It does include a lot of the background data that you don't see on the screen, so you'll have to clean it up and manipulate it a little bit, but it can be useful. And I'll show you that in just a second. And you can also highlight all the data on the screen and copy and paste it into Excel. It'll keep the same formatting. You'll just have to remove hyperlinks. So let me show you what that looks like real quick. So if you just do the CSV option, this is what it'll look like. As you can see, there's a lot of data here. But all the information that you need is here. You've got deductions and earnings and all that fun stuff. But you can easily pivot it to where you have the paycheck, the earnings, deductions, tax, and you can summarize it however you need it. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do once you understand the important columns up here. The other way that you can do it, you can just copy and paste it. So if you just copy everything on that, highlight everything on the screen, you can just copy and paste it into Excel and then right click and then delete. You'll have the option to delete hyperlinks. So that'll just bring it into your workbook and make it look like exactly what you see on the screen. So those are two different options that you can use. And then I wanted to talk about time and effort just really quickly. As before, this HCM distribution tool is the tool that business managers use to review the time and effort reports for accuracy prior to releasing them to employees for certification. And just a reminder that the July through December 2020 effort reports were due March 5th. So if you've got any out there, please check. And you can do that by logging directly into PeopleSoft HCM at any time and just doing a blanket search under the Certify a Grant Report tab. So where can you find additional GFM resources? Again, as we mentioned, if you go directly to our website, we have all kinds of training resources under webinars and training. So the HCM, more information on how to use this tool, HCM Payroll Distribution, or time and effort, all of it's located out here, and it's available on demand whenever you need it. So if you have any questions, or if you have questions regarding expenses or anything of that nature, feel free to contact Marie Baca at mailbox.sc.edu. And we always encourage you to reach out to your business manager within your department. But if you ever feel like you're need additional support, you can also, reach out to us here centrally. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
So we don't really have any questions. The one thing that was brought up was that in order to access Finance Intranet when you're off campus is that you need to be connected to VPN. And my response was that is correct. And I know that Lindsay would like to speak, so maybe while we're waiting for some questions to come in, Lindsay would like to have a few words.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Joanne. I just wanted to say I'm really glad that you guys could all attend the demonstration today. When the Faculty Senate IT Committee reached out to the Controller's Office back in 2019, we immediately started to work on, some solutions to the problems that you had mentioned. And I feel like we've made quite a bit of progress on those needs since we met with you, and with these reporting tools and the training that we've developed. We've had good feedback so far from the PIs and webinar attendees, and so I hope you're pleased with what we've showed you today. But as always, we welcome your feedback, and we want to hear about ways that we can continue to assist you and your employees, and any other improvements that we can make. I also wanted to mention that we have an upcoming webinar on April 6th to go over cost transfers in specific, and other grant hot topics. And we'd love for you to attend that if possible. And if you have additional topics that you would like to see covered in future webinars or training, please let us know. Want to assist you however we can.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. So Elaine is saying that the account closeout checklist have been a very helpful addition, and she's saying thank you. And then we have a question, is it possible to directly link to HCMD through dashboard rather than exiting the dashboard? Oh, so I think Dr. Hickman is asking if it's possible to enter HCM PeopleSoft through the dashboard instead of having to exit that and go into that separately. Am I correct? And the answer is no. There is not a direct link to HCM PeopleSoft in the finance intranet. I know there are a lot of different areas you need to go to get the information you need, but
that is something that we can look at in the future. Unfortunately, it's while it's still two PeopleSoft systems, they're different modules, and so they aren't connected. So what we tried to do is at least put the two different tools, on the same website. But we are trying to work on that connectivity through the intranet. It's a tool that we've been working with Richard Moak to develop over time, and we've been adding additional functionality as we have resources and capabilities to do so. But that is something that we are looking at doing in the future.
Okay. Any more questions, guys? And please, if there are any topics that you would like covered in the future, we could, schedule another lunch and learn if this is a time that works for everybody. I know you guys have crazy schedules and it's hard to get everybody together, but just reach out and let us know, and we'll be more than happy to put something together.
And I did forget to mention that within the grant dashboard, you can also drill down into the salary and fringe amounts, so that if you're looking at a particular grant project and you want to see what salary amounts make that up, you can drill down into that and it'll take you directly to the HCM page, so that you don't have to look at it using two different screens. You can drill down all the way through, if that helps. And I couldn't demonstrate that live just because of the PII information.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. You're welcome, Cynthia. We hope it was helpful and the timing was good. So I'll be sure to send this PowerPoint presentation and the recording for this session out to everyone that was invited to attend. I think that's it, Tiffany.
Well, thank you everyone so much for your time. We sincerely appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody.